you'll notice similarities in 5e.
Yeah, I'm frazzled for the episode.
Because if you don't have that power moment, what's the point?
Pen fight?
Adrak ki chai near Charminar at midnight.
Especially Adrak ki chai, that's what you need.
Before we dive deep into Bludgeon,
Do whatever you want, just don't click the dislike button.
And whoever out there has made that web tutorial, thank you, sir. Great job.
hello, welcome back to another episode of the Infinite Tavern podcast. We are your favorite and humble, very so humble hosts. I am Amaan, also known as by Amaan HK, and we have Raghav. What's your name?
Okay, I thought you were going for the guest at that point, but yeah, I'm also here.
I just said my name.
Yeah, but when you say we usually go for the guest.
Yeah, but there's a process to these things, Like, I've listened to your thing. You should know the sequence by now. Like, I know the sequence by now. I was like, yeah, it's Raghav's turn, then me.
Yeah, but, I'm just confused. Again, long day. A very long day. So,
Fair
I'm
enough,
frazzled.
You're excused.
Yeah. Anyways, so
I'm
yeah.
frazzled.
I'm frazzled for the episode. Aman, make sure that is what is there over there as well. Frazzled /Anorak /Raghav. And yeah, that's it. So for today's guest, as you've heard, we have Tejas for the second time.
And yet for the first time.
And yet for the first time.
The second first time.
Yeah,
And that
we're
is not
doing a time loop.
And this is not the first time that's happening. This is the second time.
Yeah, this is the second time that's happening. That we have entirely fudged it. We're not going to condemn ourselves by telling us the whole backstory. Otherwise, that would be telling. But this is take two with the game designer and co-creator of the Bludgeon TTRPG system. Hello, Tejas. Welcome back, I should say, to the Infinite Tavern podcast.
I know not to forget the nominee of the Creator Awards as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that one. Thank you.
Wow, the creator himself forgot about it.
If we're all being humble here, it's a good way to establish how humble I am, right? Just forgetting awards and nominees. But hello, everyone. My name's Tejas. As Amaan said, I am one of the co-creators of the Bludgeon TTRPG system. I don't know how much of introduction you want me to do now, or do you guys want to talk about it?
We will talk about it. The talking about it will be there. I think we would need you to talk about what you know about yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I am by profession a video game designer. I've been doing that for almost 15 years. I think I'm just a year short of that. And somewhere along the way between making games, I decided to just start coming up with rules for TTRPG combat. And I started doing that. And in the pandemic, my wife was like, hey, all those rules you use for your home game? Can you just put them in one place instead of, all your notebooks and this one web page and all that? So I did that and realized I had about 87 pages on Word, unformatted, just like text. And that's when she was like, yeah, you should probably do something with that, And so that's what I've been doing the last 4 or 5 years, learning how to format and play testing and tweaking the rules and making adjustments. And yeah, that's how I've gone here.
And you got nominated for a Crit Award for that, which is fucking so fucking good to see. Us DC folks getting nominated for awards. I mean, I shouldn't just pigeonhole us into like just being DC folks, but still, it's good to see. It's still good to see.
No, I'm super happy to see people from the country get some recognition. And I know we've got a very small industry; it's still growing, but to get any sort of like recognition for the things that are happening back home is always exciting.
You could say that we are actually putting TTRPG, like India, on the map of TTRPGs.
Hell yeah.
I I hope so. I hope we
Yeah,
get
I hope
more
so.
more people to like play these things and like discover like how we do things differently. That'd be really cool.
I mean, the hope is to make it more than just a dent in that area, right?
Oh hell yeah! Like I mean that's the dream.
Exactly.
But we strive for that, and we keep pushing to like get somewhere close to it, which is kind of what Bludgeon is kind of moving towards right now. It is, how like everybody says, don't do the crazy ambitious thing as your first project, and that's
Yeah.
precisely what I've done. We're looking at 300 plus pages right now of like
Oof.
abilities and skill trees and all that, and lore, and now monsters coming in. So yeah, we kind of we're taking the big swing up front.
Hi, Editor Amaan from the Infinite Tavern podcast. From here on out, every week we are going to be promoting podcasts that we love listening to. So stay tuned for this week's recommendation.
You've lived a sinner's life. Now you've died a sinner's death.
The first heartbreak is how good it felt to be enveloped in something that didn't hurt. I don't care if it was dark, it was still mine for a moment. I'm so tired.
What goes through your mind as you float through this day after day, night after night?
I should have done more.
I've suffered worse storms than this in my bloody sleep. Give me your all, I say! Come on!
Stay with me, Lord, because I am weak, and I need your strength that I may not fall so often.
Starting November 4th on Game Master Monday, climb aboard the worthy Mapple, sail the Stygian Sea, brave the depths of hell, and find salvation in our next Game Master Monday miniseries, Hell Whalers. Available everywhere you enjoy podcasts.
Before we dive deep into Bludgeon and the system and everything that you've been doing with it, we would like to take a moment and talk about how you got into TTRPGs in the first place.
Ooh.
Because we're doing this for the second time, the last thing I can remember is that you started way earlier than both of us had ever imagined.
Yeah.
For somebody to start.
Yeah, I think I am like, at least from India that I know of, very, very, very few, like a handful of us started way back in the day, right? My journey is a little more esoteric, I think, but it makes for a damn good story. So let's begin.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, when I was a little youngling in Baroda, I would go to game cafes to play games, and at the time it was Ragnarok, I believe. And then from Ragnarok, I kind of branched out into some browser games and shit, RPGs again. One day, while I was just playing some random ass browser game, actually no, it wasn't random ass. I remember what it was. It was called Legend of the Green Dragon. I think it's still working. I got a banner ad that said Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, oh, that looks like a cool, new game. So I click on that, and it turns out to go to a web page based tutorial for how to play 3.5 edition. It basic stuff. It takes, this is your character, Ragnar the warrior, and then you roll a d20 dice to listen in at a door. You hear goblins behind it, and then it does a quick combat tutorial as well. And that just blew my mind. I was like, first of all, I didn't even know you got dice in more than like 6 sites, and the fact that you could simulate a lot of stuff that I would do in video games with the dice and pen and paper rules. Just I was like, I've only played like freaking Life and Scotland Yard up till now, yeah. So that was just like a spark. So I played that. I was like, what the hell? And then I go home and I'm just thinking about this, and I used to play Warcraft 3 at my friend's house because we didn't have a good system. So I went to my friend's house to play video games as well. And so we were doing the Warcraft 3 campaign, and it occurred to me, it's like, could I do what Warcraft 3 is doing? And Lord of the Rings was out at the time, so we had watched those movies.
Yeah.
Could I do those with this dice set? Oh, sure, I don't have the fancy dice, but I have all the dice from like Ludo and all that. And so I started just creating like basic systems with like, okay, attack minus armor, and then these are stats, roll to see if you hit, and then my younger brother was my first he was my first test subject, so he's played everything I've created. He did my first like basic generic Lord of the Rings style fantasy, then a Warcraft type thing, then a Pokemon type thing, and then a Star Wars thing. So yeah, I just started making different things with D6s
Siblings
back to
are
back.
always our test subjects every single time.
Exactly. Oh yeah, definitely. The most brutal test subjects too, because it's not like I was a great game designer, so he found every exploit, and I would be so angry. I'd be like, "How? I didn't think of that. How are you finding that?" So yeah, so like my high school. So I discovered this sometime. I'm guessing must have been 2000. Jesus. Somewhere early 2000s, because I was in like 7th, 8th standard maybe, and then kind of continued that into high
Somewhere around
school.
mid 2000s.
Must have been. I do remember that I then introduced this to my buddies in high school. And then what we would sit at the back of the class. I'd get like my compass box with a little cloth at the bottom so you couldn't hear the dice roll, and we'd be
Yeah.
playing like in the back of the class, mostly combat oriented. I'd draw a grid on the back of my notebook, and we'd just be moving around, attacking shit,
That's
and
so
telling
cool.
bits of stories. Yeah, I mean it was cool, but like didn't help with my exams. But
Speaking of, Aman, what were the games that you played in school? Like on the benches, like during class?
Pen fight?
Exactly
Pen
what I was
खेला
thinking.
pen fight खेला वो cricket वाला खेला where you just go to the
Yeah.
pages and then get
Oh, we
वो भी
played
खेला
hand
है.
cricket.
Hand cricket तो नहीं खेला. That's new. That's
So we go to 5 runs, 6,
uh,
7, 8, 9, and 10.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And if
yeah,
you
I remember
so
that.
there's a batsman and a bowler, and if
interesting.
you just make the same thing as the bowler, you're out.
Oh, dude. Okay, we never did that. Not with the hand signs. We always use the page numbers. Oh, that's cool. That is
I
really
mean,
cool.
it's so interesting to see. Like, again, I grew up in Jharkhand, Jamshedpur, Raghav in Bangalore, and how similar the situation was like throughout, like North India and
Huh.
South India. Like literally, it's like a countrywide
Same in
phenomenon.
Gujarat. Exactly.
Same in
Gujarat में वही
Gujarat.
चल रहा था. Yeah, exactly. So, like, some things I think just transcended boundaries, especially when it
But
came to like not studying.
I do remember when in the old Nokia phones, not again, not that old, but you could access the internet through that. You had these sites called something.wap,
WAP.
uh,
Huh.
WAP India, and all of these kinds of sites which you could access via your mobile phone.
Uh-huh.
When your Nokia phones could access the internet, basic,
Right.
very basic internet. So I used to go to the site called WAP India, WAP India, or something along those lines, and I used to find games, music videos, all of that. That's where I discovered like most of Linkin Park's latest music videos.
Uh,
When accessing these websites on the phone, I came across a lot of games, and one of the games I came across was those text RP, fantasy RP, but
mhm.
with just text. You have three options. You play like a knight, or you play like this, or you play that, and they
The
used to
mage or
give
the
like,
healer. Yeah.
yeah, they used to give you options of then this happens, then this happens, what do you choose to do, this and that. Not a lot of combat, but still enough to like keep me engaged. And I believe that's where I first got introduced to role playing games, fantasy role playing games. And I was like, this is interesting, but again, I was a kid, I didn't know how to go beyond that. Technically, that's where I would say that's where my fantasy RPG
Mhm.
journey started, now that I think about it retrospectively. And how long it took for me to get back into D&D and TTRPGs. I was like,
Actually,
I could have been doing that for so long. I just didn't
but see,
go through with
it's
it.
like that, web tutorial, and whoever out
Yeah,
there has made that web tutorial. Thank you, sir. Great job.
yeah, yeah.
If you thought you were doing like a dead end job, you reached at least one person out in India. So good on you.
And in
But
a way,
like
reached out to
that,
many people indirectly.
yeah, and like that gave me the spark. It's like, oh wait, I can use dice and just
Yeah.
stats on the paper to mimic what I'm seeing on a video game. Like that hadn't occurred to me, but the moment I saw that tutorial, I was like, oh shit, and that's what opened up things for me. And then like just to continue with the kind of long-winded story, because I haven't even discovered D&D yet. So I did that, and then just as I was getting into college, Facebook was a thing and all. And through Facebook, I discovered what is like basically text-based role playing, online role playing. So
Hmm.
I was a huge Star Wars nerd at the time, so I found a Star Wars group, and basically they would create their character, no stats or anything, and they just role play by writing snippets of story to each other. And so I got into that, and that's how I made friends. And one of them, when I was talking about this tutorial I had seen, he was like, "Oh, wait, I know what that is." And then he sent me a download link to like photocopies of all the 3.5e material, and I was like,
Damn.
"Whoa." And that's how I discovered 3.5e, and that's when I made the connection, because I hadn't until that point, that Knights of the Old Republic, all these old BioWare games, Baldur's Gate, and what was it, Planescape, that those
Yeah.
things that I had seen, maybe not played, but at least seen and heard mentions of, like, oh, that's using this. Oh, okay, now I get it. And then, things started to come into the picture. Getting someone to also look at those books and then play that with me, nigh impossible. Getting the dice, also impossible. So what I ended up doing is just kind of pining until I ended up going to Hyderabad for like an institute where I was going to learn animation. And then I tried there, where I'm like, hey guys, and 4E had come out by then, and I had downloaded all the
Yeah.
4E stuff. So I was like, hey guys, there's this game called Dungeons and Dragons. I have these PDFs. Let's play it. And I'd help people make characters in college, but then we never played. Then I got a job, and as luck would have it, one of the designers who joined us, who's one of our co-creators, Vivek, he had just come back from his college in Canada. So he had learned how to play it there. He had a starter box, and he's like, oh, you know about this? Yeah, sure, I can run it. And he gets me and the other two co-creators, Jitin and Nilesh, and he starts running a game for us. So we actually met at work, and then we started playing at work. And he ran the first campaign, and then after that I started playing more regularly. I even tried introducing it to people at the board game club in Hyderabad way back in the day.
Hmm. Yeah.
But given how busy work can be, especially when you're starting out, I couldn't be a regular. So I think they enjoyed it, but then I couldn't be there to DM, and I don't think anybody else wanted to. So that kind of died down.
But
But it was during that time that
Hyder-
Bludgeon was born.
Hyderabad now has a really good board game group, though. Like a proper
Oh yeah.
TTRPG group.
Oh, okay.
For anyone who's listening, check out a roller die. Anyone from Hyderabad, you would find a really good group. They have games that happen almost all the weekends. Aman, is it
Oh,
all the
that's
weekends?
fantastic.
Almost all the weekends. It's a roll of dice and across the board. So a roll of dice is mainly fantasy and D&D based, and across the board deals with all the other TTRPGs.
Yeah, and Aman is a DM there, and I will also be a DM there.
That is pretty cool, because like when I was young, and this is early 2010s, like 13, 14, there was a board game club, and they would meet, I think, once a month generally. But there were 2 or 3 core members that had a pretty substantial collection of board games, so they were the ones who'd bring stuff in. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's still like there are still groups that are
Yeah.
meeting up and all. Because, like I
Yeah.
said, back in the day, we were a smaller like cohort of people who had these nerdy kind of pursuits. Thankfully, in the same way of what everything that's gotten you guys into TTRPGs and all. Like that's helped push all these hobbies forward.
Also, have you ever played this one text-based game called Zork?
Zork, I've heard of it, but never played it.
Oh, it
No.
is so good. So you should definitely
It's a
try.
text parser.
It's a text parser. It's basically like
Yeah,
D&D, but you just text everything.
I know. I've played text parsers. I've never played Zork though.
Zork
No.
is really good. You should, Aman, you should definitely
Nice.
try it out.
Okay, I will. That's ZORK.
I think the exclamation is part of the name.
Could be.
I think so, yeah.
I may be wrong.
Also,
Someone's gonna yell at me online.
I hope we have a big enough audience to yell at us. That would be nice.
Well, I'm sure you
Wow.
guys do.
Also, on the subject of fantasy games and TTRPGs in general, how did Bludgeon came about? That's like, let's just straight to get to the question. Like, okay, you're playing all of these games
Oh,
with
yeah,
different rules. You're making your own homebrew rules. So, at what
Mhm.
point did you think that, oh, this is a completely homebrewed game that we have made for ourselves here?
Okay, the glib answer is Daru. Okay. The full story.
Hey, all great ideas. Almost all great ideas.
Exactly. So, remember I told you that like in Hyderabad, like I met these guys at work and we started playing, right? So we were playing 4E because 4E had come out, and so we were just playing that, and we were enjoying it. We had gone to someone's house to play, and then I remember it was Nilesh and I walking back from their place. It must have been around like 1 or 2 a.m., right? And you're playing, you're drinking, you're having snacks. So we were nicely buzzed walking back, and I very distinctly remember the conversation because it was like, if you take away the flavor text, all these spells are the same. Doesn't fucking matter if I'm sorcerer, bard, whatever. What I do is the same. Acid spray is acid spray. He does acid spray, you do acid spray. There's maybe a few passives that give it some slight variation, but because we were tactics game nerds, that was not variation enough for us. So we were just like, grumbling about that. And I was like, and then we just started talking about like it's a bard. Wouldn't it be like their whole point is that they're singing and they have to sing to get their power? Why are we not mimicking that? And then we were like, oh, but then how would that work? Oh, wouldn't it be cool if they had to like sing snippets of song and that's their action? That they do the action of singing a snippet of a song, put it together, and as they develop that flow of getting so many segments of a song together, then they cast a spell, right? Like that is the prerequisite. They can't just be like, oh yeah, acid spray, just like the wizard, but aha, music. There's the action kind of mimics what you're expecting them to do. And that was like the inflection point. Very much like the web page tutorial, that one conversation stuck with me the next day. And I'm like, actually, yeah, that would be better. And then I quickly wrote something up, sent it to Nilesh, and he's like, yeah, shit, that works. And then we just started riffing off of each other. We built out the bard. We built out the structure of what an arcane system would be with that spell points and constructing a spell. And from there, we were like, okay, cool. How would a warlock work? How would a sorcerer work? How would a wizard work? And we built that all out, and we were like, shit, not bad. How would warriors work? And then we started doing warriors, and then we started doing other classes, and then we realized we needed different umbrella systems to really get the essence of what different class sets are.
So, it reminds me of that quote I read somewhere: "Right drunk, edit sober."
Oh yeah, yeah, that works.
Uh,
That definitely kind of it's what happened.
Also,
here,
I
yeah.
love the fact that the first class that you guys worked on was the bard.
Of course, it was. I mean, it's the one with a very strong identity, right? Like, I think when you like look at all the classes, and this is probably more of a personal opinion, but bards and warlocks have very strong identities. You say the word, and everybody has a certain knowledge of like, yeah, this is what I'm expecting, and it's very close in wavelength to each other, right? Bard was what Nilesh was playing at the time, and he was the one who was kind of annoyed with the cadence of how he played. And sure, I'm sure some people will say that, oh, that's just a 4E problem. But even if you deconstruct like your action set, uh, you'll notice similarities in 5e and bits of Pathfinder too. I've not played a ton of different stuff as well, so I can't speak for the wider TTRPG space. So it was basically we found a problem, and as game developers, we were like, okay, here's a problem. How do we solve it? We started solving it. We liked our solution, and we built on it, and we built scalable solutions so that they could be they could fit into different areas and still give you variation. So if you look at Bludgeon, just the arcane classes, a sorcerer, even though it uses the same function of you craft a spell, how they get to the point of crafting a spell varies from how a bard gets to the same point. And that is what gives them the flavor and makes you as a player feel like a sorcerer or a bard or a wizard or a warlock. And we're really proud of
So I have a question here. So why bludgeon?
that.
Why not slash or pierce?
I like bad jokes, and when we were like making this, usually all video games have like a internal
Yeah.
project name, right? So just as a joke, we hadn't even intended for this to ever be published, but we would just be like joking about, oh yeah, we'll finish this one day, someday, and once we finished it, we'll just go out there and talk about it and bludgeon people to death with, the general gist of what this is until they start playing. And then so it just became known as Project Bludgeon. And then when when I started editing the book, I was just like, I don't know what to call it, so I just kept it as Bludgeon, and it stuck. Sometimes there's a simple answer to things.
Well, sometimes a simple answer is the best, in my opinion. So, I'm assuming this was around late 2010s.
Early, actually, it's if you open the book, I kind of talk about the beginnings, and it's somewhere in the 2012-13 time frame. That's when we began.
So, can we talk a little bit about the mechanics of it? Like, you have a D20 system, a base
Hmm.
D20 system, but you also have a grid distribution.
Stat.
Uh,
Yes, we have a 3x3 stat distribution. Yeah. The thing with a lot of D20 systems is that they can fall into certain familiar patterns, right? And this is not to say that Bludgeon doesn't have a few familiar patterns. When you go to create something, you're looking at a genre, you're picking up genre conventions. With stats specifically, I was never happy with the way stats were. They didn't make sense to me conceptually. Um, I There are issues with role playing, and I come at this that even though Bludgeon is a heavy combat focused one, we really care about the thematic associated with role playing. In that, if you're role playing and you then come into a room and just say, "Yeah, I'm just gonna persuade. Here's my charisma roll." How is that role playing, right? Just saying I persuade, or what I'm percepting. I'm using perception. That doesn't build a scene. That doesn't tell me how your character is really doing something. So a part of that problem is the stats and the skill system. And to move away from that and to kind of structure it in a way that felt, at least to me, coherent, I came up with the 3x3 stat grid. And the grid essentially is by column your body, your mind, and your charisma or your persona, right? And across each row, you have your sustained effort, which is kind of just how you are naturally at something. Your exerted effort, which is you applying some exertion in that capacity. And the final is a reactionary effort. So, of your body, for example, you have your sustained effort, which is, let's say, your ability to keep running for long distances without getting tired. Your exerted effort would be your ability to actually pick up speed really quickly when you start running. And your reactionary effort would be your ability not to trip over yourself or fumble or notice a rock on the road so you don't, trip over it or, misstep. And you have that for both your mind as well as your general persona. And that allows you to have very contextual stats. So when you say, I walk into a room, I don't really care if you're perceiving, you have to tell me how you're perceiving. And then I can choose the right stat to match that action. and that's why we have 3x3 stats.
So, can you give us an example? Let's suppose I am a bard, and
Yeah.
I walk into a tavern, and
Mhm.
I want to take a look at somebody who who can stir up something bad in this place.
All right, then let me frame that scene. You walk into a noisy tavern. You get this. You can immediately smell spilled ale, dry hay, and just the general sweat of tens and tens of patrons. You know somewhere here is someone you're looking for. Someone you know, if they notice you, is going to kick up a fuss to create a distraction and run away. How are you going to try and locate that person without them locating you?
I would just pick the first open table or open seat that I can
Mhm.
find, just nonchalantly go over there as if I'm not even caring where I'm entering, but I'm going to try to use my periphery visions to see if anybody's mood shifts as I walk in and I take that place.
Okay. So what I'd first ask you to do is use your exerted effort within your charisma column, because you're trying to do something where you're taking an affectation. So I'd ask you to roll that to see, how well you blend in with your surroundings.
Yeah.
Then,
Okay.
because you're trying to look around and notice something, I'd ask you to do a combo roll. I'd ask you to roll your exerted effort of your body, which is you using your senses physically, and also your reactionary effort inside your mind stat, which would be to you noticing something that's off about the patterns around you. And that would then give me a sense of, okay, and then I could give you answers based off of how you rolled those. But that's how I would use them. And that's why the stats are there in that format.
Okay, that's talking about it, obviously you anybody can explain, but going through an example that actually makes me feel like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
How a GM can
It's
then
fun.
decide. Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes away this thing where like you have those like the moments that I don't like in typical D20 systems is, yeah, I built a rogue. I have this thing or a bard, and I've put everything in charisma, and therefore I walk in this room, boom, charisma. But that's not what you technically did, right? You were doing something that wasn't charisma based, and that that nuance of action was what I was missing, and that's how I was trying to solve it here. So even if, let's say, we have skills in the game as well, and you can take a skill that says, your ability to read body language, I would still have you add your bonus to read body language, but I could apply
Yeah.
that to any stat based off the action. What matters is the action. So
Okay.
you can't just be like, I'll keep doing, or as a bard, I'll keep using persuade because my charisma is high and I have persuasion as a skill, and just keep saying that as a combo, but not really getting into the role play of it, right? Here, I want the mechanics to really get you to role play naturally by itself, rather than having you think of it like a video game.
I think as spellcasters you have something called domains.
No, that's the divine system.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Divine, completely forgot.
uh,
Yeah.
that's all right. We have five systems, right? We have the arcane classes, we have the martial classes, we have the chakra classes, we have primals, and then we have divine, right? So those are the kind of five basic power sources. If you take your generic fantasy archetypes, you can kind of sort them into those areas. I guess if you want to go into like nitty gritty, you can even say there should be a sixth for telekinesis, but we've not gotten there yet. We chose these five. Um, one day, an expansion if we get popular enough. But with divines, we have domains, and the whole point of creating a divine system was they shouldn't function like a fighter. They shouldn't function like an arcane. The whole point of being someone who believes in something is you believing in something and kind of enacting that belief, right? You can't just say, uh, I'm a cleric to this goddess of healing and then go kill 15 things, right? So for us, we create a system that cares about the actions you take. So inherently in combat, like a cleric that cares about, let's just say, combat, they're looking to ensure that they themselves and the people around them are doing something related to combat to gain the favor of their god so that they can then cast a smite or some sort of divine intervention. Divine's pretty cool actually. Like those are still in the free book. The only thing we don't have is the primals.
Those though, like do you have any proper setting like D&D has Forgotten Realms? Do you have a setting that
Yeah,
all of this is based on? Any lore
yeah,
for this? How magic came to be and all of that?
yeah. We have all that's in the book. Honestly, it's pretty like I don't know. Like the thing for me is like because I'm so heavy into modding things. Like I've never run anything outside of a book. And we should probably talk about this on the full thing, but like, so the lore was never my priority. I do have lore, but I don't really care much about it because I expect everyone to go create their own thing. Uh, and I want them to. I give them enough building blocks, enough prompts to be able to do that. But if you want to use the standard setting, go for it. If you don't want to, even better. I want that. I want people to take this and make it their own. Yeah.
I think the lore aspect came up. I think even I asked you like why, why no lore, and I think while you were sending out for reviews, um, some people also kind of took up on it
Yeah.
because there's usually
I
always
shared
a
the mail with
lore.
you.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
always with game systems. I mean, it's almost like, oh, it's a given that there will be. So, what about Anantalok? What can we expect from Anantalok that you guys are working on?
Um, well, with Anantalok, uh, we actually did do like this whole lore dive, Vivek and I. We we started off with like a basic, like, okay, creation myth of how this place was made. We took some inspirations from some of the stories we were told as kids. Stuff from uh, our old texts, stuff that we've read from like Norse and Greek mythology along the way. Kind of just mixed and matched a bunch of stuff. So we took our creation myth, and then we were like, okay, we want to kind of be at an endpoint that ends with essentially the setting I was running in our home games, which is what we started calling the Age of Unity. And they were like, okay, let's kind of time box the world into different ages. And again, this is like when I talk about modularity and scalability, I want eventually, if we continue with this project, to give different settings based in different timelines. So you see how the world evolves from time period to time period. So we have about 6 or 7 time periods. I'm forgetting all their names because it's been a while since we wrote it. But it goes all the way from like the founding to the age of Rakshasas to the age of rebuilding to the age of strife and to something else, and then eventually the age of unity, which is at the end of 100-year war where a body called the Unity has essentially conquered the entire planet and everything is now under their control. The wars have just ended and there is a tenuous piece, and that's where the adventurers are now kind of stepping into it. Vivek has written essentially 5 short stories about like what happens to the different races during the Age of Strife, so you can kind of use that to build up some of the history or some of the historical context of who your character is. I used some of that actually. I did a AP with the people at TPK, and in that AP, there's this moment where Shema finds a hidden statue of one of the founders of the city. And in the beginning, I describe how everyone has that same statue in the city. It's this young, badass looking queen with a staff and all this, always, looking like very proud and out to the future type of poses. And she finds this little shrine deep underground while they're under kind of in these tunnels, and it's a small shrine, and it depicts this same character as a woman with a kind of deformed hand and holding a walking stick and surrounded by her books and scribes. And like, I knew that because we had this amazing lore that Vivek's written for us about what's happened in the Age of Strife and who this city, like, they revere this queen called Raya, but who she really was and how that perception of her has changed over like a few hundred years was something I got to play with in that AP.
We're discussing Bludgeon's lore on record, and I feel proud to be part of this in a very small way. So there's another uh, class or not class or sort of domain that you mentioned, which I would like to get into, the chakra.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, the chakra classes. So they're based off of like more structured martial arts, right? Everything from stuff we had would see in wuxia-based movies to like our own homegrown kalari payatu. And we wanted to kind of find a way to like showcase that. And we kind of centered on this idea of moving between emotional states. We wanted to do this kind of emotional state tracking. So we created a balance bar, is what we call it. And you move between either side of that, rolling a 1d4. So initially you choose and you go on one side. And when you're on one side, you gain bonuses to your 2 hit value. And when you're on the other side, you get bonuses to your damage value. And you roll a d4, you go to one side, and then on the start of your next turn, you roll a d4 and you always go in the opposite direction. And you keep swinging back and forth like a pendulum until you finally hit that perfect 0 mark in the middle. And when you do that, you get your kind of super move. You get to kind of do. I guess I'll use a Bleach reference here. If you've watched Bleach, when they have their Bankai attack, it's that essentially. You
Okay.
have like a power move that you can then
Yeah.
use up. And then obviously you get passes that allow you to manipulate your balance bar better. Um, the way we have a mechanic called ethos, where the way you were trained in your martial arts affects that balance bar, where you can then manually say, okay, when I'm on +3 on this side, I also get +2 to my defense. And when I'm on +1 here, I'll also get this thing. So you customize the balance bar over time as well. And so you're trying to kind of you get your customized character, and you're trying to go to different parts of that bar as you play.
So the balance bar is basically one on the other side of the sort of the chakra, and you're trying to find like the perfect balance. So
Exactly.
how would one actually hit the perfect balance if you're always like penduluming from one side to the
Because
other?
you're rolling a d4, right? So let's just say
Okay.
on turn 1 I rolled a 3, right?
Okay.
So I go
Yeah.
to 3. Let's say next turn I just so happen to roll 3 again. You always go in the opposite direction of where you are.
Yeah.
So then I would
Yeah.
have gone back to 0. And that means I
Okay.
balanced again. And then I use my special attack.
Okay.
But if I had
Okay.
rolled a 4, I would have gone
Mhm.
to 1 on the other side.
On the other side, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's the d4 and the way it works, you will eventually hit it. It's just how soon, and then we have passives that allow you to kind of fudge it in the direction you want as well.
I mean, I keep saying that is cool, but that actually is cool. Same way, with the bard, how you build up to a crescendo on
Yes.
each turn, and here you're trying to find the perfect balance. Uh, okay, these are some really good mechanics. Personally, I'm still waiting on my trying to find a time and a place to play Bludgeon. But
Mhm.
what plans do you have in store for the system in itself?
Most of the system is pretty much done. The last thing I've been doing or attempting to do in between a very busy work schedule is just tweak the primal system, which is not something anyone has seen outside of my home groups. But I'm really proud of that as well because it uses a bit of a card mechanic. And the whole mechanic that we were trying to mimic was with any sort of primal power, the whole idea is you have this latent power, and you're slowly kind of like a dam releasing water. It's a slow build, and then it's just an unstoppable force, right? So how do we give you that feeling of I'm kind of weak and I'm slowly building up, but as soon as you get to that build up, it's just nothing is stopping you. Um, and we did that with a kind of a card mechanic where you have different cards that you have basic cards that you kind of build up that give you smaller abilities, and then you trade them in for higher level cards or single use special spells. But that is what I've been basically refining a little bit because
An important question that I have, like it's really really super important that I need to ask you. What ancestries and species do you have in mind, and can we play as Perry the platypus?
oh god, see, here we go. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, for context, for people who are listening who haven't read the book, we have a platypus race. Okay,
Does he wear a fedora?
literally every playtest. No, but everybody wants him to, and every time I've done a playtest and people can make their own characters, immediately one person is like, "All right, I'll say don't call him Perry, so fine, I'm Perinitis, I'm Perseus, I'm Perry Baba. I don't care.
Purushottam.
Like they'll find,
You're
like they'll find exactly they'll find any way to say Perry without saying Perry. And then it'll just be the same reference again and again, which is fine the first time. But when you've seen it 7 to 8 times, I mean, come on. But I like the fact that people love that race. I really do. So we have currently 15 races, and what we do is we've given them each adaptations. And again, this was to solve a problem that, in essence, using words like species and all that aims to solve, but we did it from a mechanical side. The problem generally being bioessentialism, right? Where if using old systems, if you're a dwarf, you always got, if I remember correctly, +2 constitution and +2 this, right? Something else, I don't remember. But that always meant that because you were a dwarf, you always had more constitution, and because you were that, you always wanted to build with things that scaled with constitution. And that then gave different races a predisposition, especially if you're going for to optimize towards certain classes. And that just, I mean, just conceptually, it's weird. What if this guy was just a sickly dude, or didn't go out much, or just read a lot and didn't care to exercise? What about that? Um, we solve that by having adaptations. And what that is when you create your character, you choose, okay, I'll be a dwarf, or I'll be a Balu, or a Vana, and each you have a list of adaptations, which are physical alterations that happen to you or to your body because you live somewhere or you've grown up in a certain environment. So, for example, the Vanner can grow up with a longer tail because they've grown up somewhere arboreal. They can end up with like a very hefty body, very much like a gorilla, because they've grown up in that sort of tribe or environment. And each of our adaptations are meant to be a physical affectation, as well as giving you some sort of thing you can do that is conditional, but not a stat boost or like a flat stat boost. And that's another kind of fun way that you can customize your character and ensure that they stand out and are very personal to how you want to be.
So you know what would make the whole platypus thing even better?
What?
He need
What?
he needs a nemesis, a mad scientist
Oh,
who's actually a really good guy,
Oh my, here we go.
whose perception is
yeah.
so low that he cannot recognize his
Of
Without a
course, of course.
fedora, yeah.
There are humans. You can play a human. So there's definitely that. I can add an adaptation that says has a abnormally large nose. Uh,
and a triangle shaped head.
and a triangle shaped head. I mean, that's the cool thing about adaptations as well. Is like I've even put in at the beginning of that section. It's like if you want to add your own that fit your world and the type of thing you want to do, go for it. Like I've given you like 5 to 6 options here, but you can do so much more. When I say we want things to be modular, right? The one thing I do not like is this constant stream of, oh, here's a new class, here's a new subclass, here's a new subclass, here's a new subclass. And they do marginally different things. I like modular systems that do all those things without needing to keep adding content. So we do have the ability to build an artificer. We don't have a class that says, I am an artificer. So if you
Okay.
we have, I think under wizard, there is the ability to start imbuing spells straight into objects. You also have the ability to tattoo spells onto you. We also have the ability to use physical components to enhance your spells if you run out of slots. Not slots, if you run out of spell points or pages in your book. And there are a few other things, but essentially you can build an artificer, because I know someone did that in the past. Maybe not in a one-to-one D&D way, but
Yeah.
quite close, and kind of making their own version of it. And that's kind of what we've done across the board, is we want to give you options to do different and crazy things. So one thing we're very proud of is, even if both of you, let's say, were like, hey, I'm going to be a Huth bard, and you use, let's say, the same element, your choice of adaptation, your choice of passives, your choice of verses, and your choice of class expertise will still make it so that the way you play, even action, moment to moment, action to action, will differ. And your
Okay.
considerations in combat will be different from each other because of those choices you've made, even though you've both gone Huth Bard. And that's something we really want to like push for. Like, we're very much in, your mechanics really need to inform how you play and help boost how you role play, rather than just be like next to role play.
You know what? I can actually imagine a Full Metal Alchemist whole ass campaign using this system.
You probably could, actually. I would love
Right?
to see how you pull that off. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's options I think that could work there, because even
That could work.
warlocks, yeah, warlocks do that.
Uh,
I'm sorry,
then
I didn't mean to cut you off.
and I'm forgetting the dude who had like a scar which looked like an X across his face in Full Metal Alchemist.
I think his name was just Cross.
Yeah, I think it was just cross. I can't remember something like that. It reminds me of using tattoos. When you said it, reminded me of that, like sort of using your runes for spells and everything. That's cool. One last question, or rather, two quick questions. Shouldn't be quick, but we have to. Two quick questions before we go. One, what's your favorite moment in TTRPGs? And two, what advice would you give to fellow game designers or system creators when they're getting into something like this?
Okay. All right. Um, so the first question is, what is my favorite moment in TTRPGs? Is this like general TTRPGs, or
Yeah,
when I'm running a session, what's my favorite
and
moment?
yeah, anything.
So when I'm running something, there are two things that I really love. One is when someone makes a connection between different sets of disparate mechanics that I haven't made a connection of, and finds like this OP combination where you're like, damn, right?
Broken.
Broken is good in a way, because Bludgeon is designed to be conditionally broken, meaning that every player will have this one moment where they feel broken and they feel fucking good about that. And we want you to have that, because if you don't have that power moment, what's the point, right? But you cannot be that overpowered all the time. So we've striven to strived, sorry, strive to be uh, as or balance in that way, and we're tweaking things to ensure it stays that way. So I love that. The other thing I love is when we're playing and a player forgets that this is a game for a moment, and they refer to something as if it's an actual thing, right? Like, I'll have a player just be like, "Oh shit, that person would feel bad. Yeah, why would you do that?" Like, they're thinking about this either as an NPC or of each other
Yeah.
or of a situation in a real context. And that's when you're like, yes, everything I've provided to set this up has now transcended from just words to like this little theater in their mind that's a thing. And so those two moments are like what I really love, and I like to kind of like get to when I'm running sessions. What advice do I have? I'd okay. Take this advice as something, even if you're building any type of game, board game, video game, TTRPG. Start with a problem statement, right? Because the more you can define a problem, the easier it is to get to a solution. If you sit down and say, "Oh, I need to design a TTRPG," cool. Well, what does that mean? If you sit down and say, "Oh, I need this to be fun," the hell is fun, right? I mean, both of those things are, nebulous, amorphous. So if you start finding a problem statement, much like what we did with Bludgeon, where it was like, we don't like the way the spell structure is, and this set of actions is not what we enjoy. How do we create a set of actions that make me feel like I'm singing a song? That was the problem statement. What actions make me feel like I'm singing a song to then cast a spell? And we solved that one problem, right? And then with that one solution, you can then build on it, or that could just have been a game unto itself, right? Of course, back in 2013, what did we know about Zines and all the wider, community? I only discovered the community way, way later when I actually started, checking out Reddit and stuff. But problem statements are your best friend, and the more boundaries you give yourself allow you to get to a very coherent, precise solution rather than a sort of watered down, this kind of works for everybody solution. So keep defining a problem and define it in as many exact terms as you can, and then try and solve it. I guess, and I'm sorry to kind of extend this, but like to add on to that, you don't have to fix everything of what you know. So in the same way that I look at Bludgeon, I'm like, we didn't go to, redo the D20 system. We didn't set out to change, the general flow of, oh yeah, stat plus skill versus a defining threshold. Like, we kept that stuff the same, but we innovated around it because that is what we chose to do. You could go the other way, right? But just know what you're getting yourself into, and know that there's innovations at different levels. You innovate at the foundation, you innovate above the foundation, you innovate at the periphery. It's all innovation.
I mean, that the words of wisdom, innovation at every level. I think that's a good point to end this little talk. Tejas, where can we find you online? And where can we find Bludgeon
Well,
online?
Well, Bludgeon you can find on itch. So if you just go to itch.io and search for Bludgeon TTRPG, you'll find us. Rulebook is currently free, still free. I don't know why. I guess I'm just allergic to money. But you can get the rulebook and play it, and essentially get the updates as we continue to update that book in time, slowly, as I've said before, work permitting. And you can find me and the team by searching Tactics and Chai on both Twitter and Blue Sky. We'll probably be more on Blue Sky these days. And that is spelled Tactics as the word tactics, N as the letter N, and finally Chai as in Chai. And that's
Because
just
we
one
love
word.
Chai. We love Chai.
Oh, hell yeah. Especially Adraki Chai. That's what you need.
Oh,
After
come
a
on.
long
Say
day.
less. Hyderabadis unite.
I mean, exactly. I spent 10 years in the.
Adraki chai near Charminar at midnight.
Oh boy.
Oh
Yes.
my. Okay. You know what? I
Dude,
might
and
go for
during
it now.
Ramzan, when you have
It's good stuff.
Halim, the Halim you would get in Hyderabad during Ramzan is to die for.
Well, I'm vegetarian, so
I'm sorry, dude.
Again, thank you so much, Tejas, for doing this a second time.
Happily.
Because
And honestly, thank you guys for like having me back.
hopefully we don't have to do this a third time.
yeah, that's what I was saying.
And thank you for coming to the podcast. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, please make sure to give us a good rating. It really helps us in the algorithm. And do comment on us because that also helps. If you are watching on YouTube, consider subscribing, commenting, liking, adding it to your playlist. Do whatever you want, but just interact with us because we are a small niche
Yeah,
community and we just
do
want to
whatever
reach
you
out to
want.
you.
Just don't click the dislike button.
Yeah, just don't
We
click
would
that.
dislike that.
I mean, yeah, we would dislike that.
If you've come to this podcast in a really interesting, semi-bizarre way, write about that. That I think that would be awesome in the comment section to know how you found this podcast and
That would be
why
amazing.
you want to know about what's happening in India.
And make sure to check out Bludgeon, as he just said, on HIO, and you can check out Tactics and Chai on Twitter and Blue Sky. And
And
until the
and
next
Tejas,
time,
and Tejas just gave
yeah,
you some homework, so get to it.
yeah,
Hell yeah.
lots of homework. just get to it, do it. And until the next time, may all your rolls be great.